tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namassami. Namatu acharya sa. Okay, so we'll jump back to the early part of the book. And this chapter begins with a Dhammapada verse. That monk who, while young, devotes himself to the teaching of the Buddha illumines this world like the moon freed from clouds. Quite appropriate for Luang Por Chah. A life inspired, 1918 to 1954. So this is, we'll get into the life story of Ajahn Chah. And in the beginning of this section is called A Suitable Locality, and then subtitled Isan. So I'm sure that's Pati Rupa Desa, like from the Mangala Sutta. What is a highest blessing? The Buddha declared that all avoidable human suffering is caused by mental defilements, and that these defilements can be completely eliminated by a systematic education of body, speech, and mind. Supreme among the virtuous qualities that, quote-unquote, burn up the defilements, he revealed, is forbearance. It is perhaps no coincidence, then, that the unwelcoming environment of northeast Thailand, known to its inhabitants as Isan, nurtured a great flowering of Buddhist monasticism in the 20th century. The vast majority of monastics, recognized in Thailand as enlightened masters over the past 100 years, have come from this region. Isan occupies a semi-arid plateau, almost square in shape and somewhat larger than England. It is bounded to the north and east by the Mekong River at Laos, and to the south by the thickly jungled mountains of northern Cambodia. In the early part of the last century, Isan was still separated from central Thailand by the forbidding barrier of Dong Phaya Yen, a huge forest abounding in wild animals and home to a vicious strain of malaria. That boundary with Cambodia is not just thickly jungled, but it drops into kind of an escarpment, so it's quite a natural boundary, and not that easy to get up and down. Although there is, like along the borders, there's Cambodian-speaking Thais, but it's not that easy to go back and forth. And then that Dong Phaya Yen is what is, say, like that area of what's called where Bak Chong is, where Ajahn Jayasaro, Ajahn Yanadammo, that used to be this huge, huge forest area. And I remember Luang Por Pasanno talking about when he and a group of his friends, I think there was half a dozen of them, went from Ubon to central Thailand. This wasn't as monks, but they were young men going to seek their fortunes and get experience and work in central Thailand, where it was more well off than the Isan. And out of 6 of them that went, 3 of them died. And Dong Pei Yen. It was a pretty normal statistic. So it was very, it was a feared sort of area. And Dong Pei Yen is actually, that's a new name. It was called Dong Pei Ya, something that Dong Pei Yen is like this nice cool forest, is what it means, and its name prior to that was something, I can't remember what it is off the top of my head. Gee, do you remember? Oh yeah, before that it was named something. It was in the time of Sarit and the 1950s, trying to open up that area, and the government at that time changed its name to make it a bit more inviting.
Well, the three that died, was it malaria?
Pardon?
The three that died, was it malaria? Or
Yeah. I mean it's hard to imagine how common it was in those days, and treatment was, pretty limited. It's like, say like a Taodam member going there, like returning after the pansa that I spent as a young monk, and then going about 8 years later, taking the community Wat Pah there, and during that time, there hadn't been any monks there, period. And so all the people who had died hadn't had proper funeral rites, so they were really kind of happy, relieved to be able to do proper funeral rites, and so that they were all buried, and because without proper funeral rites you don't do a cremation yet, so they were all buried, and so I went around and just started asking how people died. About half and half was either they died of malaria or died of gunshot wounds. There's a similar sort of illness. But they have malaria, and say like first pansa that we stayed at Pujam Gom, I think half of us got malaria. I think half of us got malaria. Early years at Taodam, it was not quite so extreme, because we'd stay pansa out at Pujam Gom, which is more, of course, there are more mosquitoes around then. But then we'd stay the cold season out at Taodam, so there's fewer mosquitoes around, but still. I've got malaria at both places, so. Different strains. If for what it's worth, it was a better strain of malaria out at Taodam. It's because the one out at Pujam Gom, that was easily goes to cerebral malaria, so not much fun. Okay, continuing. Even before the majority of its original forest cover was hacked and burnt away, Isan was never an idyllic land. It lacks the fecundity of the central Thai valleys. The soils are for the most part impoverished, if not by sand or stone, then by a choking salinity. The rivers flow in deep gullies, making it difficult to create channels for irrigation. Very few areas provide more than one crop of sticky rice a year. Groundwater is often too salty to drink. Travel has been fraught with difficulty. Whereas water was the predominant means of transport in central Siam and the basis of its economic success, the rivers of the landlocked Isan are navigable for only a few months of the year. With little scope for commerce, subsistence farming was, for centuries, the people's main occupation, and bartering was their means of exchange. Isan has 3 seasons. The cold season, from November through February, is the most comfortable, but may be racked at night by harsh winds. The hot season, from March through June, is numbingly hot, and the mid-year rainy season generates a humidity so thick as can make those walking through it feel almost as if they are wading through the air. Life has always hinged on the coming of the monsoon, but the torrential rains that dissolve the fears of drought and crop failure often lead to severe flooding. Nevertheless, the people who have settled this land have been tenacious. They have survived and somehow flourish. So who are the people of Isan, and where originally did they come from? The majority of its population have always identified themselves ethnically and culturally as Lao, a name derived from one branch of the peoples who migrated south from what is now southwest China during the first millennium CE in response to the steady encroachment on their land by the Han Chinese. One migration trail passed down through the Chao Phraya River Basin, and that'd be central Thailand. And those who took that route played a significant role in the development of the Siamese Central Thai civilization. Another branch followed the Mekong southwards and established settlements along its banks which were to contribute to the origins of the ethnic Lao. They were not, however, the first or only inhabitants of Isan. In Ban Chiem, there is evidence of a sophisticated culture dating back over 3,000 years. Following waves of Austronesian and earlier diverse Mon Khmer immigrations, the European Dark Ages saw Isan settled by both Cambodian Hindus of the Chenla Empire and the devoutly Theravadan Buddhist Mons of the Dvaravati civilization. Subsequently, Isan formed part of the vast Angkor Empire that dominated Southeast Asia from the 8th until the 13th century, and that, at its height in the reign of Jayavarman VII, adopted Mahayana Buddhism. The Lao Thais slowly expanded through the region, absorbing the cultures and genes of their predecessors as they spread, and dying all with the distinctive features that it has retained until today. Perhaps the link between the Lao and Siamese Thai, henceforth referred to simply as Thais, may best be characterized as that between close cousins. This closeness has, however, not prevented the Central Thais, inhabitants of a more benign land, from holding to the conceit of a superior sophistication. In fact, the differences between them are minor. They speak an almost common tongue, although differently, with different tones. In religion, they have both adopted the Sri Lankan form of Theravada Buddhism, incorporating along the way Brahman ceremonials and the ancient animist traditions of their tribe. I was thinking of the Khmer throughout the northeast of Thailand. There's ancient shrines and temples, and actually, like Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Sumedho spent a rains retreat in Pupek is in Sakonnakorn, and he was on retreat there. That's actually where Jack Kornfield met him, and it was an ancient, abandoned Cambodian kind of temple, and it was up on a hill, very ancient, and they're scattered around through both, say, the Isan as well as into Laos. On the whole, the Thais in Laos share a gentle, easygoing nature and are a remarkably tolerant people. The idea of persecuting others for holding beliefs different from their own has always been incomprehensible to them. They are not particularly cerebral. Abstract theories and philosophies rarely excite them. But they are skillful pragmatists with a considerable talent for compromise. The bamboo bending in strong winds has always been one of their favorite images. They avoid open confrontation wherever possible and consider the unfiltered expression of strong feeling to be uncouth and immature. They admire the ability to remain calm and unruffled under stress, and they aspire to a quote-unquote, a cool heart. If the Lao differ in any discernible way, it is in their more pronounced resilience. As with all peoples, they are full of contradictions. A somewhat exaggerated concern for rank and status is, for example, often combined with a deep love of independence. Given the loyalty and devotion they have always shown to the rather austere tenets of Theravada Buddhism, it is the frank, uncomplicated sensuality of the people that is perhaps their most surprising feature. Their culture has never considered sensual desires to be a source of guilt. But although they often display a great love of language, finery, and food, in fact, all the so-called good things in life, they reserve their greatest respect for those who can renounce them. By any of the contemporary secular standards by which the development of a culture is measured, GNP, political power, technological innovation, vibrant art, Isan is an insignificant backwater, its people unremarkable. But from a Buddhist viewpoint, it would not be too fanciful to consider Isan a superpower. Throughout the 20th century in particular, Isan was an abiding stronghold of Buddhism at a time when all through Asia, other darker isms, imperial, communal, capital, material, were wreaking awful depredations. The vast majority of Thailand's 300,000 monastics are from Isan. Most significantly, almost every one of the Thai monks of the modern age believed to have realized enlightenment was born in one of the peasant farming villages of the northeast, many of them in, quote-unquote, the province of sages, Ubon Ratchathani. We'll leave it there for today.
Sadhu, 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 anumodam.
Questions?
Yeah, is Ajahn Sek from Isan?
Ajahn Sek is from Isan, yes, absolutely. He's from the province next to Ubon, and in ancient, in not that long ago, was a part of Ubon. Like Ubon was when they say, like in the old times of Ubon Ratchathani, it was a much larger area. So Yasothon, Ben, ใช่ก็เป็นอุบลอยู่ดีแต่ได้แยกออกเป็นจังหวัดของตัวเองตั้งแต่เมื่อไหร่
ก็อายุผมพอดี
44 ปี
ใช่
He said, okay. It became its own province where Ajahn Sek is from 44 years ago, because it's exactly the same as how old he is. So it's right adjacent to Ajahn Sek's homeland, and so it used to be a very large province.
I heard like an anecdotal story of my understanding was like an older man came to a forest master of some kind and asked him, he wants to be enlightened, what practice should he do? And the Ajahn said, Aditan, to be reborn in Ubon. I have no idea, where it comes from.
Yeah, no, it is. I mean, that's say colloquially, it is called the province of sages, like sages, philosophers, Nakbrat. The good boxers come from Koran.
Do you know the relative populations of the northeast relative to Thailand as a whole?
About a third of the whole population of Thailand. So it's populous, so yeah, it's about a third. Chame, it's about a third of the whole population. Huh?
I think so. Maybe
Yeah.
I'm not quite sure.
I think so. That's what I understand.
Very dense, anyway. Very dense.
Yeah, it's densely populated. Like you go walking Tudong in the northeast of Thailand, you're tripping over villages all the time.
Other than like national forests, what parts of Thailand are not densely populated?
Mm-hmm.
Other than the forest preserves, what parts of Thailand are not densely populated?
Well, I mean, if you compare it to America or Canada, then it's not really a fair comparison. But say the South is not densely populated. The North is not densely populated. It has a lot of that is geography. Just the rugged mountains. So it's not so densely populated, and then the central areas, the really central areas, fairly densely populated, but it's also along the edges of the central part, then it's not so densely populated. Also, there's a different system of land ownership in the central Thailand. It's large land owners, whereas the Isan is small land holdings.
There are lots of Wat too, lots of temple.
Mm-hmm.
Like in the middle part where I grew up, it's just like you turn around, the temple everywhere. Maybe like, I would say maybe 7 temples.
Mm-hmm.
Very, very into the culture, right?
Yeah, it's very much a part of the culture.
Yeah. Like I go on my bike and there's another temple, you go like 3 kilometers, 5 temples.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But very small.
Okay.